Today I am at Dover Museum with the Bronze Age boat. I'm here with Catherine Holt, the collections manager. So Catherine, what I'm really trying to do is just simplify classics and make it more accessible to the wider public. I really want to streamline the facts and make it something that everyone kind of knows our ancient roots. So the Bronze Age boat is the oldest seafaring boat we have, and it makes it a really invaluable kind of piece of showing the ancient world. Do you have any idea, can you provide a quick overview of how this may have been used? What was it for? Was it for food, trade, fishing, and who may have used it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the difficulty we have with anything from this age is that when you're talking about prehistory, we're talking about a time before written records. So everything that we know about the boat, we've learned from looking at the boat itself, looking at the shape of it, looking at how it was constructed. And so we can't be 100% sure what the boat was used for, but from the size of it, from the sort of complexity of it, we believe it was a seafaring boat to start with, which is very exciting because that's very rare to find that in this period. And it might have been used for a variety of different purposes. The wonderful thing, but also sometimes the frustrating thing about boats is they are often used for multiple things during their lifetime.
Yeah.
So there is a possibility it could be used for a variety of things. It could be used for as a warcraft, it could be used for fishing. But we think, looking at the shape of it and the functionality of it, that probably the most likely scenario is that it was used for trade for cargo.
Right, okay.
And because of its size and its strength, its ability to travel along the coast, we think it would be used for quite long voyages, probably along the southern coast of England, possibly even given our proximity to the continent across the France.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask, if you think that the Britons living along the coast actually had contact with France in another country. And I think that's quite interesting, that feels kind of fairly modern, that we were voyaging to another country and not sitting in this isolated kind of bubble. But the fact that Britons were so interconnected with other cultures, do you think that actually shows an impact on maybe the culture they had here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, there's often this misconception that we weren't involved with the continent until much later, but we know from archaeological evidence that there was trade with the continent at this period. We know that technology and ideas had come across from Turkey, from Bronze Age itself.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of technology was developed and brought over to this country. We know from archaeological remains, and we actually have one just down the road from where the boat's found. So we have the Langdon Bay wreck, which was a Bronze Age hoard, which is in the gallery alongside the boat.
Yeah.
We know that came from the continent. So we have clear evidence in the archaeological record that kind of trading was happening. And they had to come across somehow, so it must have been by boat.
So here we have a collection of tools that was found in Langdon Bay, so fairly near the find spot of the boat, right?
Yeah, absolutely, just down the road. So the boat itself was found what is now inland, just near to the harbour. This is found just the other side of the harbour in, as you say, Langdon Bay.
Yeah.
And what this is another amazing Bronze Age find. It is a collection of Bronze Age tools which were found on the seabed in 1973. And what we can tell from this is that we clearly had cross-continental trade with Europe. We believe that these were on their way back from France to Dover, perhaps, and that the vessel either sank, although we haven't found the remains of the vessel as yet, or perhaps they were jettisoned, maybe because the vessel was in trouble and needed to get rid of them. But yeah, we're so incredibly lucky to have such a significant Bronze Age find just literally minutes away from the Bronze Age boat.
And do you think these were the type of tools that would have been used to construct the Bronze Age boat?
Well, we've got quite a variety of stuff here. So we have got some things like axes and things that would have been used. You've got knives and things like that. But yeah, what it does show is just the variety of tools that people were implementing and kind of the scale of manufacture as well. This is just one cargo.
Yeah.
So, as we were saying before, the amount of jobs that were being generated in the industry that are supporting this kind of venture is actually probably on a scale that most people wouldn't imagine it to be at this scale at this time.
100%. Okay. So this boat is made of oak.
Yep.
So obviously Bronze Age, people may think everything's made of bronze, but no, this boat was made of oak. Do you think, was it shocking how well preserved that this boat was?
Yes, it is. Organic fine, so wood is an organic material, and that often doesn't do too well in the archaeological record. It's often very exciting to find intact bits of wood, and something of this scale and so intact is an absolute lifetime, finding generations sort of thing. It was due to probably luck more than anything else because of the way that the boat was deposited. So when the boat was deposited, it was covered in a layer of river silt, which meant that it was in a waterlogged environment, which is really good for preservation of wood. It also meant that it was kind of sealed, so that the usual kind of bacteria and pests that we would associate with damaged wood couldn't get at it. So it wasn't really until the archaeologists uncovered it that it had anything to worry about.
Wow.
Of course, once we uncovered it, we suddenly had to worry about how we were going to preserve it for future generations.
Yes. Where you found this boat, do you think that it was purposefully put there? Was it put there for a reason? Do you think they actually intended to go back and use it again? Do we have any idea why it was essentially left there?
As with everything, as I said, with the joy of prehistory and also the frustration sometimes is that we don't know for sure. There's several schools of thought on it. There's some ideas that perhaps it was intended to be sort of refitted, have some elements replace them, maybe it would have been reused, perhaps it had come to the end of its natural life and it was just abandoned. Or, we do have quite a few instances in the historical record of boats being used as kind of votive offerings because they were quite special items. They represented, if not a spiritual element in themselves, they were kind of a symbol of a lot of hard work, a lot of time, effort, and money gone into putting these together. They were a status symbol, if you like. Okay,
so since this boat was quite a statement, it seems to contrast with the not so extravagant housing there was in Britain at the time, quite basic and, functional, practical, but basic housing. Do you think this boat was quite overwhelming, maybe quite an extravagant statement, like we've been saying? If a lot of time and money was going into the construction of this element.
Yeah, I mean, from what we know of boats of this kind, they are very rare in the archaeological record. There would have been a large amount of time and effort in the organisation of actually putting these boats together. It's a vast quantity of raw materials going into this. Yeah. So obviously there was a big economic driver for wanting to have a boat like this. However, in terms of it being, it wasn't a ceremonial boat. It wasn't like we find in some other cultures, boats are built purely as a status symbol or purely for a burial or something to show this person was a very big deal in society. This was, we're very confident, a purely functional working vessel. Yeah. And you can see from the finish of the boat, it is quite rough in places. We know from having done some experimental archaeology and having built a half-size replica of this boat with Bronze Age technology and techniques, that it's possible to achieve actually a much finer finish on the boat than they did. And that was using people who perhaps didn't have the wealth of woodworking experience and skills that these people would. So it's not that we're better at it these days, in fact we're probably not anywhere near as good. It's just that this was functional and perhaps
they didn't need that finish.
They didn't need it, and they were doing it perhaps in a hurry and just getting ready to go. Yeah.
So one of the things that I find most interesting about the boat, which perhaps a lot of people don't realise when they first come in and look at it, is actually we only have part of it. So this boat would have been much, much larger in reality. So going back to what we were talking about, the amount of materials we would have needed, the complexity of building it, you can almost double that effort on what size the boat would have been originally. It's also a little bit flatter than it would have been when it was actually in use, because it was under a road, so it's got squished essentially. So what I've got over here in the case is some ideas of what the boat may have looked like, and we don't know for sure. So this is, I don't know how well you can see this, you might need to move. This is basically what was actually found. This is what we have in the museum case right now, and it's one end of the boat. So we have several possible ideas for how that could have been incorporated into the larger full structure. So we've got this one here at the bottom where you can see that we think we might have the majority of the boat. We're just missing one pointy end, if you like, for the non-technical, and one flat end here. Other idea is that we are missing two pointy ends of varying size. So this one you're only missing really a very small section at each side, and this section you've basically got most of the stern but basically none of the bow, and there's a much larger boat there. So that all three are possible. You'll also see that we've got several different ideas of how people may have sat and steered the boat. So there are these pieces of timber that come across, they're called thwarts, and they're what people would have sat on basically to paddle the boat. So we believe that the boat was paddled from a sitting or a kneeling position, probably a sitting position, just like that, not very complicated. And you'll see from the model at the bottom, we've only got two thwarts, so obviously we're not going to have that many people in this boat. The next one up, we've got three, so we can have more people in this boat, and the next one up, we've got four thwarts. So you're looking at increasingly larger boat, more people powering it, and potentially larger cargo coming across.
So what you were just saying about these people probably extremely skilled, more skilled than maybe we are now with woodwork, do you think that even having seafaring vessels like this would create quite a lot of jobs for the area at the time? Because I guess not only do you have the people who would actually be using the boat and in the boat and for trading, but also the people who would have to fell the trees and actually construct the boat and create the tools to construct the boat and everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's its own little industry, really.
Yeah.
So you would have had people, as you correctly say, to fell the trees. That was actually probably a more skilled job than actually building the boat itself.
Yeah.
These are humongous trees we're talking about, way bigger than what we see today. And they're having to expertly bring them down. They're cutting them up. They're transporting them. They're getting them ready. They're dressing them, making them ready to be made into the boat. Obviously, you've got a team of people that are building the boat itself. Perhaps maybe 10 people building the boat. We don't know for sure whether these kind of coastal communities would have had those skills kind of in-house, if you like, whether they would have, they certainly would have had good quality woodworking skills because they were building houses and other things out of wood, and you can see that those skills existed. But boat building is quite specialised, and from what we've seen from other examples of Bronze Age boats in other parts of the country, the technology used is almost identical. So it might have been that there were specialist craftsmen in the Bronze Age who were boat builders who would perhaps travel or even be invited to come to services to help them learn those skills so they're able to produce a boat like this, which is awesome.
Yeah, so it's like they were really at the top of their field kind of thing and maybe influenced by the people.
That's
really
absolutely master
interesting.
craftsmen at their time.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, there would have been all kinds of jobs in terms of repairs of the boat, saving the boat, and as you said as well, actually making the tools themselves in order to be able to achieve that, gathering raw materials. So it would have been a real industry just in and of itself. And I think we sometimes are surprised by the level of organisation and project management, if you like, that they were capable of.
Yeah, to pull off such a huge task with all these different kind of moving parts. Yeah, and I think it's quite easy to either, one, put the ancient world on kind of a pedestal and think they were so amazing for their time, they were so clever, they did things just like us, but maybe that's a little conceited to say they were like us, so they were clever. But also I think a lot of people look at the ancient world and go, that is some alien, far off place that was so different to what we are now. And I think actually, I think it's a bit of both, that maybe they weren't, it's not about being incredibly intelligent, it's about access to wealth and resources and exploiting the materials available to create quite a practical structure. But what do you think? Maybe they were really intelligent, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right, actually. There was obviously a lot of innovation happening in the Bronze Age. You know, the introduction of bronze as a material type had opened a lot of doors, and there was a lot of emerging technology and changing ideas at this time. So it was a really exciting time to be alive, even if they didn't realise it perhaps at the time. So a lot of things are changing, a lot of new ideas, a lot of new technologies are suddenly becoming possible. And they are utilising them in ways that have never been done before. So yes, there is a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity happening. But equally, like you say, I mean, the principals, they're just trying to live their lives and utilise what they have to the best of their ability, the same as we do today.
Yeah, they're thinking, what do we need? Let's create something.
How do I get that? Okay, I need this, that's over there, I need a boat to get there, how do I build a boat?
Yeah.
Excellent, job done. Same as we go, I need this piece of software to do whatever.
So I think this is what I think maybe will help people understand and see the relevancy of the ancient world, is actually find where things were so relatable, because I think it's easy to get lost in dates and huge political events or wars or lists of emperors and senators, but actually when you think of the kind of average person who was doing daily jobs, working class kind of life, maybe then it's more easy to see, to put it into a perspective where you can see how relevant it is to modern life. And it's exactly what you were saying there about, it's just like finding a new piece of software, like let's find this new boat so we can go to a new place. And you can see how they were so similar to a modern culture, really. So as we were saying earlier, it's created a lot of jobs, one being actually seafaring and being in the boat. Do you think that this must have been quite a new industry, obviously, as this is a new design, a new innovation, new technology? Do you have any idea, do we have any idea if this would have been quite a desirable job to have, or were the conditions quite poor? Do you think it was quite dangerous if this was a new way of exploring the world and the sea?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I think in many ways it would have been a very exciting job. You know, you're going on long trips, you're getting to see parts of the country, this country, and perhaps even abroad that you wouldn't have seen before. Obviously there were dangers and hardships that would come with that. So unlike we have here at Dover now, there was no protected sort of harbour. So once you're out of the beach, you're already into quite harsh environment, you're already into quite choppy waters, and you've got to know that you have the skills and the boat has the capability to cope with that. But I think many of the challenges that they had then are really no different to what we have now, and Dover is still obviously a very significant seafaring area. We have boats in and out of the harbour all the time, and to have that connection between the modern harbour and obviously this boat, which would have been going on the same waters all those years previously, is really lovely, and to be able to make those links between the distant past and the modern day.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what I kind of set out to, even for myself, to understand more thoroughly, is actually where I'm looking out to the sea, like this morning, is actually exactly where maybe our ancestors could have been stood, looking out and undertaking these quite dangerous journeys, like you were saying. And it was the same kind of journeys we're doing today, but obviously technology has come on slightly, and it's not just wood and you're sat so close to the sea, really. I think it may have been quite scary, like you were saying. So not only did we have this brilliant discovery, but were there any other materials found in or around the boat that actually was quite interesting as well?
Yeah, so when we found the boat, there were some material that were found nearby and in the boat, so there were some pieces of pottery. I actually have one here now, which I can show you. There's a very small rim shard here.
Wow.
And we also found some pieces of work flint, some burnt flint, there was some shale, and there was actually a withy, which was a straightened one, so an unused one. So a lot of analysis was obviously done on these finds, and unfortunately most of them we think weren't actually related to the boat, it was just the sort of proximity they were from a nearby site that's broadly contained with the boat. However, it is possible that the withy, because it was very similar to the type that was used in the boat, was a spare perhaps, that was just left behind or intended to be used in later, that it might have happened. And they also think that perhaps the shale was maybe part of the last cargo of the boat. We can't prove that obviously, but that's what the kind of theory is at the moment. That it came from Dorset around the Kinridge Bay area, and that perhaps they picked it up in its raw kind of unworked state, and they were bringing it back for jewellery manufacture perhaps.
Yeah, okay. So I think that just shows how important a discovery like this is, because it's not only this huge amazing vessel that we have found, but also the remnants that are near it, or even the vessel itself shows how shows ancient techniques, shows ancient tools that were used, and also gives us an insight into like many ways of life and all the jobs we've discussed that seafaring would have created. Do you think this is an important artefact for a modern viewer to actually know about or understand?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously I'm incredibly biased.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me this is one of the most significant finds we have to tell us about what life was like in the Bronze Age in Europe. And as you say, the questions it helps us to answer, and more questions it helps us to ask about the people who created it, why they created it, what they were using it for, and the depth of understanding that it has allowed us to gain is extraordinary.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's exactly what I would like the public to kind of understand, is how important such a find like this would be, and how something that you just look at and maybe think, oh, a boat, okay, so they went in the sea. Actually, all the things we discussed, it shows so much more, and it's got such a rich like depth of information, really. So thank you so much for all the information you've given me. It's been absolutely lovely to meet you and a joy talking to you. So thank you very much. So it's been absolutely brilliant to learn more about a period of time that I actually don't know much about. It is a period of time that's often lost as it's less documented, but we have found absolutely invaluable information from structures like this boat and wreckages like the Langdon Bay wreck. Seeing this boat in person is so awe-inspiring, as it's such a huge and impressive structure, and it really brings the ancient world into the modern day. You can kind of see how people lived, and you can understand why it's relevant. It really makes the ancient world far more relatable. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Catherine Holt, the collections manager, for being a brilliant interviewee and shedding so much light on this amazing structure, and also everyone here at Dover Museum for having me. Thank you so much, and I urge everyone to come see this brilliant collection.